Good day, and you're watching Access to Justice, and I'm attorney Delia Parker Mims. We've seen it all too often. The headlines read of another teen suicide. Nationally, suicide is the third leading cause of deaths among persons 15 to 24. And if you think it doesn't happen in Denton County, then in 2014, as a result of the high number of teen suicides, Denton Regional Suicide Coalition was developed to bring awareness. Now, there are many facets and factors that will cause a teen to go down this path: mental health, trauma, and bullying. And we've heard a lot about bullying in the past. And today, we're going to talk with Mr. T-Ronn Hicks, also known as Simply Bad in the wrestling world, about the work he does with youth and how he's trying to make a personal effort to try and combat the bullying that's going on in the school districts. Now, Mr. Hicks, can I call you Mr. Hicks, or do you prefer Simply Bad?
Whichever you're comfortable with.
Well, Simply Bad is actually, it's just really cool. So we'll just work with both of them.
We'll go with that.
Now, you're very active in the Louisville community and the school districts, one of the most popular mentors around trying to work towards bullying. And we're going to talk with the audience today about what you're doing and try to answer some questions to help parents look for signs of bullying, things about what they can do and what teens can do, because you're on the forefront. I know that you go into the school districts and talk with sometimes the bullies and sometimes the people who are being bullied. But before we talk about that, you got into this for some very personal reasons. I understand you were bullied as a child.
Yes, ma'am.
Tell us about that and what brought you to what you're doing now.
So, coming from a single parent home and being the youngest of 5, my 2 older brothers thought it was cool to beat me up. And in any language, no is no. And I got to the point where I figured out they wasn't just beating me up, they were bullying me, because I had to do, every chore that they had to do. If I didn't, I got beat up, to the point where at the age of 7, I actually contemplated suicide.
See, now that's a very interesting position or direction that you're bringing. Bullying doesn't just happen outside the house.
Right.
It can happen inside the house and be just as devastating.
I think to the point where people don't recognize that no is no. Children, we have to, as parents, we have to remember that we were once children, and we have to open up our eyes to see the signs of what is really going on with my child. Because that's one of the things that finally my older sister, who didn't live with us, she noticed the signs.
Right. And you said at the age of 7, you contemplated suicide.
Yes. I was at my aunt's house, and my brothers had just beat me up. She had taken me for the weekend, and I won't forget, I had actually taken a knife to bed, and I just wanted to kill myself because I was tired of the abuse. I was tired of the torment, and I just couldn't get a grasp on reality. And it was like, if I end it now, I won't have to go through this anymore.
Yeah. So your frame of any type of peace being achieved was, I just need to check out.
Check out.
Right.
Check out.
So did your mom ever notice any signs, or you said your older sister recognized some things?
My mom never really recognized the signs because the threat was there. If I told, I got beat up more. And if I didn't, I still got beat up. So it was a losing situation. And one of my saving graces is the reason why I got into pro wrestling, is that was a relief for me. And so I was able to meet Rocky Soul Man Johnson.
Okay. All right, let's work our way up to there. So you're at 7, you're at the lowest point in your life for a 7-year-old, right? But that's still very much real.
It is real.
When children are hurting, it is real hurting. We know that as a nation, we were just grieving what happened in Florida, and then a few days later, the headlines read another child committed suicide at school.
Yes.
So when a child grieves, I think the first thing we need to recognize is that their feelings are real.
Feelings are real, and I think where us as a society, we have forgotten to care like we used to. And one of the things is that our children need to know that they're cared for, that they're loved. And we need to open up our eyes. But not only open up our eyes, we need to open up our hearts. Because you can think with your mind, but when your heart tells you something's wrong, it really is wrong.
Yeah. Well, I think some of the most important things you've mentioned today is as young as 7, you considered suicide. And I think that's really eye-opening. And the realness of your feelings and the validation that hopefully parents and other people in charge, teachers or other caretakers, need to understand is those feelings should be validated when, no matter how young that child may be. Now, before we get to your wrestling, you were being bullied at home. Did you transfer any of that at school?
Yeah, I was angry at, I could snap on a kid just like that, you know, for just jumping in line. And what I later realized is that I was so bitter towards my brothers, but I didn't have the strength to take it out on them. So I took it out on someone that was my, you know, that was my size, that was my age, you know, and that happens. And that's what, when you see the trend of a bully, he's either being neglected or he's being bullied by, now parents bully too, and some people say, well, that's crazy, Hicks. No, it's not. You know, whereas when we discipline, that's one thing. But when you're bullying your child to the point where they're taking their anger out on classmates or neighbors, we need to open up our hearts as opposed to just thinking, oh, well, everything's okay, because it's not.
Now, and I don't know how you are, Simply Bad, or myself, but I might be 1 or 2 years older than you. But we certainly come from an era where parents probably did not validate what children said or thought, and you were to only speak when you're spoken to.
No doubt.
And that kind of did not, I'm sure in your situation, help in your mother even recognizing any of those signs.
Right, you know, and rest her soul, Mom never, as a matter of fact, my mom never knew that I was bullied. My older sister, I finally told her, and it wasn't until I actually had to fight back that things got better. But one of the things that, and some people get upset about it, but today's generation is so different because they want to be heard. And us as parents, we get frustrated, but really we need to listen, because if we listen, they're crying for help.
Right. Okay. And the social media, the cyberbullying didn't exist
years
ago.
No.
Yeah. It didn't exist. And that creates a whole different level of bullying, and that lasts around the clock.
It does. One of the schools that I worked with in Kansas, there was a student that was being bullied, cyberbullying. And I had to flat out tell her, you have to turn off your computer. And she's like, but it doesn't go away. I said, you only entertain, when you entertain it, it's there. But when it's not, it's not. And so one of the things, but parents need to actually meddle, get in their business, because that's what happens. Because if something happens to our child, we're going to be that parent that's going to be in their business.
And in monitoring all that 24-hour access to social media is important to do because of the continuous round-the-clock bullying. Okay, now let's progress to you became a wrestler. Okay, when did that start happening?
Now I started loving wrestling at the age of 7. So 7 was a great, bad, good year for me, if you will. I started watching TV. I fell in love with wrestling on TV, and I met Rocky Soulman Johnson. And so Rocky said, if you have a dream big enough, you write it on an index card, put it on a place that you'll see every day, and that's what you become. So first thing is I wanted to stop being bullied by 13. I wanted to be a successful pro wrestler, and I wanted to stop bullying when I retired from wrestling. That's what I said at 7 years old.
So did you go to any wrestling camps? Or
Sure. Some people are familiar with the Junkyard Dog and his son. They taught me how to wrestle in Nashville, Tennessee, and back in 1994. So I went to camp in Nashville, and then trained in Kentucky with Rated X and Bobby Blade, and just a lot of great guys, and met a lot of legends like Jimmy Valiant and Jerry Lawler, and so the list went on and on. So everybody, it was great because with you being that young, everyone pours into you because
Right.
they want to see where you're at. So the training was hard, but I survived.
That was a little bit after the Von Erichs, is that correct?
Yes. It was after the Von Erichs.
Okay. And in your desire to become a wrestler, you actually became a pretty successful wrestler, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
I have a list. Let me see if I can get some of these accolades in here. I'm going to have to put my glasses on to go through this long, extensive list.
Oh, thank
You were part of the Ring of Champions in 2012?
Yes, ma'am.
What exactly is that?
Ring of Champions is your rookie year in your wrestling career. You won a title, and so my rookie year, I actually won 3 titles.
Okay.
So,
And you're a 6-time UWA Pro Wrestler of the Year.
yes, voted by the fans.
You are a UWA Pro Wrestler of the Decade in
Yes.
2012. That
Yes.
was that voted by the fans?
Voted by the fans.
Or did they simply count all of the times you had won?
Well, they based it on the fans and based it on the fan participation.
Okay. So you had a way of getting in there and getting the crowd going?
Either loving me or hating me, whichever one, but I loved it.
Okay.
Still, yes.
And in 2018, you were inducted into the New Breed Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame?
Yes, that's actually coming up in April. I'll go back to Evansville, Indiana, and receive my award, and I'm super excited about that.
Well, I know I'm going to ask you a question, and you don't have to answer it, but I'm sure you've been asked before. Is it real?
I would say the injuries are.
Okay.
The injuries are.
real. Okay.
So, and the paycheck is.
Okay.
Okay.
That's great. Well, that's awesome that you went into that line. That kind of helped build your confidence up.
Yes.
And addressing the issue, but you never left behind that feeling of isolation and being bullied. In fact, you've channeled that into an area where you're actually helping others.
Yes.
You won the Bully Effect International Humanitarian Award in 2015?
Yes.
What is that?
What it is there's a international program based out of Pennsylvania, and Penny Jean, and she works with a lot of countries about bullying. And on social media, it's a positive way to overcome bullying. Mm-hmm. And she noticed that some of the work that we were doing here in North Texas, and then figured out that we went down to Houston to help in an anti-bully walk. And we did an interview, and I was one of the finalists, and so I actually pulled that one out. So I'm super stoked because believe it or not, she has a following over 6 million people. So that's an incredible honor, but it's also incredible that that's a cry. That's a small
Mm-hmm.
cry of the billions of people on this earth, that 6
Right.
billion are bullying has affected them in some sort of way.
Now, I read some statistics that showed that 30% of all students in high school have been either bullied or involved in some form of bullying, and that's quite a bit of numbers.
Yes, it is.
If there was the Center for Disease Control were to get involved, that would be a number that they would be concerned about, the level of bullying that's happening. And it's really phenomenal that you've been able to use your prestige to channel it in a direction that is certainly needed. One thing that you did was you also wrote a book, and it's called My Inside is Brighter Than My Outside.
Yes.
Okay, is that what you have right there?
This
Let's
is what
take
I have.
a look at it.
And so what it is, it's a copy of my book.
Let me show
Yeah,
the
there you
audience.
go.
So this is your book right here?
Yes. And it tells how I overcame bullying. And so there are 4 key things that I really harp on in this book that make it incredible to overcome bullying. You have to have courage, self-esteem, faith, and you have to believe. So you have to, in your expertise of being a lawyer, you have to believe that you're going to, and you have to have the courage, and you have to have the confidence, and you have to have the self-esteem, you have to have the faith when you present a case. So that's the same way that I had to overcome bullying. I had to tell myself I do have courage, I do have self-esteem, I do have confidence, I do have faith, and I believe that I can overcome it. So that's how I overcame it.
Okay.
Now, believe it or not, my brothers were a little mad about the book, But they quickly got over it.
So I guess it chronicles a bit of your childhood and those fears that you had
Yes.
to overcome and what you did to work towards that.
Yes.
Did you have a Simply Bad in your life that helped you walk through this process when you were growing up?
Besides praying a lot, got to be real. Got to keep it 100, as the kids would say, or fleek. You know, they got they got all these new slang words nowadays. But I actually just had when I say a real, like, just downheart best friend, extended family member. His name is Bill Breckenridge, because he would actually stand up for me against my brothers, and he would stand up when I was having issues in the neighborhood.
So you had someone who helped you in addition to your aunt.
Yes.
Recognizing those signs. Where would someone buy this book if they wanted to get a copy of this?
Actually, you can go online to Amazon.com, or you can go to Barnes & Noble's. Barnes & Noble, I get in trouble all the time, BarnesandNoble.com to purchase it. And if you go to our website, which is simplybad.com, and if it's down, right, if it should be up tomorrow because we're having to revamp a lot of things, and you want an autograph copy, we can make that happen for you as well.
Okay, that's awesome. Okay. All right, so you wrote a book, but
Yes,
here's the phenomenal thing. You use your status as a wrestler, channeling it to help others get out of that bullying, and you've been very successful at that. You have been a 5-time nominee for the CNN Hero Award.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
And that's national recognition, correct?
Yes, correct.
You were a 4-time nominee for the Steve Harvey Neighborhood Award Community Leader.
Yes.
Okay, and that's a great honor.
That is a great
to
honor, yes.
have that. And then you've had one of the most awesome honors that I can that I recalled, and that was you were awarded an award with the Denton County Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta. Is that correct?
That is so true. I love the Deltas. It was the Catalyst for Change, 2016, and they noticed the work that we're doing.
Right.
And so I'm truly honored. You know, you can't go wrong with Deltas. I'm married to one.
You really can't go wrong with Deltas. I mean, I just can't say enough about that organization. It's one of the most phenomenal ones that exists.
Yes.
But anyway, I'm just a little, Delta promoting out there.
It's all good.
How
It's
it
all
goes.
good.
It's
Yes, I
all
do.
they're all good.
They're all good.
Okay, so now let's get to the meat of it all.
Okay.
We've talked about your childhood and the trauma that you went to as a 7-year-old, and I just think it's phenomenal how you're brought to light that even a 7-year-old
Yes, ma'am.
can think of committing suicide and be so devastated about the things that are happening. And you had a friend that helped you. So with your organization, you actually go into the school districts and work with children. So tell us about what you're doing and what you've been winning all these awards for.
So what it is that we go into the schools, we do a presentation, and then we have a Q&A session in which I speak with the students, but I also want to speak to the counselors, and I also want to speak to the assistant principals, and I want to speak to the principal, because the children are there for at least 8 hours a day, and that is their second home. So we need to know what is bothering this baby or this child or this teenager that's affecting them, that they can't get the proper education that they need. Once we figure out the problem, and we've just started a new program, I'm so glad I'm on your show to mention it. It's called Emma's Circle. And what it is Emma's Circle is where the bully and the victim sit in front of a mediator at the school, and they begin to talk out the problems. The bully says, well, why he hates the student, and the victim is able to counteract. Right. And then, if they're not able to come to a positive agreement, they sign a piece of paper saying, hey, best just leave each other alone. And so that's
and that would be one of those contracts where they agree to stay away from each other.
Similar to a contract to stay away from one another.
And that is another tool parents need to understand that is an available option if there's bullying going on, and reasonable efforts like mediation don't help. You can actually go to your school and demand that there be some type of contract entered between the students so that they don't have contact with each other. That's a very important tool, and that's necessary.
And I wanted, and to keep going on with what you said, to tag on what you said, parents, when you go to schools, make sure that the student that is being, they're saying doing the bullying, make sure his parents know. Because a lot of times other parents don't know. And then you get a letter coming home from this school saying, hey, you have a no contact, your child has a no contact order. And you're like, well, wait a minute, what's going on? Make sure they're in the loop, because maybe that parent would like to reach out to you and say, hey, let's squash this, or there's something going on at home that we could probably work on squashing it.
Do you find that maybe there are some situations where the behavior of the parents is exacerbating how we'll say the bullier is acting in school?
I must agree. I've had several instances where I've tried to talk to kids, and then I meet the parents, and I'm like, okay, you know, the old cliche, the apple doesn't fall from the tree, you know, and I think one of the things that parents forget is that your child is just is a small part of a big world. And when they keep making this bed, they have to lie in it later in life.
Right, they do. And it is true. There's a lot of times that the child is picking those cues up from their parents. But when you look at it from a society point of view, it seems like we are having simply just an epidemic of bullying, not just at school, but in all of our behaviors. If you don't respect the president, you don't have to respect the person that was voted in office per se, but you respect the position. We're seeing adults, legislatures, senators, congresspeople disrespect people in power, whether you like that position, you know, whether that was your party or not.
Right.
To me, that's the real trickle down that we're having an effect on, is this simply bad behavior that we just have in general.
I must agree. I think one of the things that people forget, and I'm always quick to do this, it's okay to be quiet. You know, you don't always have to let everyone know what you think, because my children are quick to tell me, you know, Dad, you don't have to comment, and I'm quick to tell them the same thing. But but it's okay not to say anything. If you don't have to, we have different views on a lot of things. But the one thing that we can agree on is that we can agree to disagree.
Right. I read once where a lady who had lived, she was almost 100, and they asked her, what is your key to longevity? And she said, what other people think about me is none of my business. One of those things. And, you know, you don't always have to clap back.
Yes.
You know, and social media provides a really good platform for people to do that consistently and create that culture.
Yes, we call them keyboard cowboys, because, you know, they're tough behind the keyboard. But would they say that same thing to that child in person, or would they say the same thing to that person? And probably not. Okay.
So now let's give our audience some specific tools to think about. We know that through your organization, you provide mentoring, not just in general training, but you actually provide specific mentoring to students.
Yes, I do. One of the things that I encourage parents and teachers to do is when a child is distancing themselves from the normal activities that they used to do, open up your eyes. Another thing, if you notice that your child is not eating what they used to eat, if you notice your child is irritable towards you, kind of angry towards you, that's a sign that there's something going on in their life. That should tick you off that, wait a minute, there's something going on. Another thing that you want to look out for is if a child is constantly, when they get home from school, they're wanting to go to bed because they're frustrated, they've had a long day, they're stressed out, and when you want to call family time, they don't want to be a part of it. They're isolation. Look out for isolation, behavior change, eating habits, and the distance.
Okay. Now, one thing we just barely touched on is, what can other children do? You mentioned that you had a friend who kind of helped you against your brothers, and that kind of helped give you a little bit of courage and confidence and faith and belief that you could get through this process. When other children are being bullied, what can the non-bullied children do? Because it seems as though children may get afraid and not want to become that victim.
Right.
But how can they step in?
And I've seen, and we practice this in Virginia, and we practice this in Kansas, and it's worked. If you see someone being bullied, it's okay to walk up to the victim, put your hands around them, and walk them off, because you're bringing a peaceful solution. But number two, you're telling the bully this child has friends. And most of the times that I've seen bullies that have encountered two people, they usually walk away, and have lunch with the victim that's being bullied and ask them, how can you help? When a child is being hurt, the first thing they want to know is that someone cares. They want to know someone has their back. And when that happens, the problem usually is not such a problem anymore.
Right. And so that goes to what you said earlier, is that we need to care more and have the courage to do the things that are right.
Yes, ma'am.
Because other students do see and recognize when someone is being bullied, and something as simple as just walking up to that bullied student and putting your arm around them and walking them off, not engaging.
Right.
That can go a long way, and letting them know that you see them.
Yes, you do see them. And a lot of the situations that you see in today's media, they've been backed into a corner. They have been victims of bullying, and they've been backed into a corner, and so they lash out. Now, I'm not condoning anything that's happened. I think if you have a problem with the person, you deal with that person. But a lot of the things that are going on, we need to meet it head on.
Right. I think engaging, one of the things that you said is so important. Letting the person that's bullied know that they're being seen. Everybody wants to feel like they're not invisible.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
That's important. And just trying to interact with them. But that's the courage that the other students are going to have as well, not just the bullied student. And I think it's important that you're going out and talking about those things. So we're getting close to the end of our show, and we're going to go over a couple of current events and just see, how Simply Bad looks at them.
Okay.
Gun control. Do you think teachers ought to be armed in school?
No.
Why not?
Because it's taken the focus off of teaching our children. If you ask me, I think we need some marshals inside the school that are trained to carry guns, that have been in situations where they've had to use guns in combat. You've got a lot of veterans that are out of work. You got a lot of unemployed police officers. So you wouldn't be in favor
of requiring your $40,000 a year salary teacher to become a marksman? You wouldn't be in favor of making that one of their new job requirements, huh?
Not at all, because teachers have enough pressure, and they're already underpaid, and so now you want to put a gun in their hands and not to say that our children. I think what we have to realize, and when I say this, we have to realize this: we as a society, we need to step up and protect our children. Whether it be at the schoolhouse or the community. We as a society, we can't wait on the government to do everything. We need to step up and do things.
Totally unrelated issue. Did you see Black Panther?
Loved it. Loved it.
How important was that movie to, I'm not going to just say African American students, but to all students, seeing those strong Black characters?
One of the things is that I must say is that we're a very unique race. And one of the things I want to say is that the characters did a phenomenal job. They showed togetherness. They showed true having one's back.
Right, they sure did. All right, well, we're getting to the end of our show, and I allow my guests to do what I call a final statement. So I'm going to let you do a final statement, and we're going to keep it, within maybe 30 seconds statement closing that you'd like the audience to remember.
Okay. What I would like for you to remember is this: the day is yours. How you live it, you control it. No one controls you but you. But in that day, make sure that it's great. Make sure that it's phenomenal. Never look back, because when you look back, you could cause hurt harm to yourself, but always think that you are the best, you are successful, you are great, because what you think of yourself is what you become.
Okay, that's good to know. And I always take what I call the final argument. So we call this access to justice.
Yes, ma'am.
I do want to thank you for coming, Mr. T-Ronn Hicks, also known as Simply Bad.
Thank you for having
And
me.
I'm going to go on YouTube and see some of your phenomenal moves.
Thank you.
And maybe try to pick up one or two my own self.
Yes, yes.
See how that works. Now, in my closing arguments, I would like to point out that gone are the days when bullying ended when the school bell rang. Now, back in the day, all we had to do was just try to get home. If you can make it home by 3:30, then your bullying was over. But in today's time, bullying can extend 24 hours, 7 days a week, nonstop, through cyberbullying, through the use of our social medias, and the amount of pressure that teens are facing is certainly different. And we have to be able to recognize, validate, and appreciate the amount of pressure that teens are going under and who are constantly being harassed. When they're under that type of pressure, suicidal thoughts become one of the only things that they think of that they can obtain in order to get peace. And so just validating your teens, knowing that you let them know that you see them and you hear them, and having the tools to go into the school, to talk to the teachers, the principals, ask for a protective order. Those are the things that we need to do to communicate with our children and help them get through this bullying process. And for Access to Justice, I'm attorney Delia Parker Mims. Thank you for watching.